Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we have some breaking Zelda rumor news. We have news of a rumor regarding the Legend of Zelda. It looks like the big Zelda 40th anniversary campaign is going to begin January of 2026. 2026 is Zelda's 40th anniversary, technically the first Legend of Zelda game released February 21st of 1986, so 40 years later, would place us in February of 2026. But we now have a brand spanking new rumor for some key Zelda dates throughout the year of 2026, which lead me to believe there is going to be a huge Zelda 40th anniversary campaign throughout the year with some pretty substantial releases that will be exciting a great deal of Zelda fanbase, getting them involved in Nintendo Switch 2 early on, and also hyped for that live-action Zelda movie in 2027. But before diving into things here, let me shoot my shot and ask that if you do find yourself enjoying my content, if you like Nintendo news, rumors, and theory videos, consider subscribing. If this video nets over 200 subscribers for me, I will put out that dance from Majora's Mask. I will literally dance myself, and I'll also throw in a picture of Ruby. I put up this challenge a couple days ago. We didn't succeed there, although with the prior challenge, it did work out, and so I did share a little bit more of my beautiful cat Ruby. That's the most people preferred for that particular video, but if you want to see me do this really weird dance from Majora's Mask, please subscribe. But now on to the rumor. So the rumor is actually coming from a clip from Attack the Backlog's podcast that he'll be publishing later today. He is teasing various elements of the podcast that he's conducting with Nash Weedle. So for those that don't know, Attack the Backlog has recently been told some things that have come to fruition. He talked about the timing of the partner showcase. He also talked about the Adventures of Elliot being in there. He actually teased that game, and he was spot on those things, so it seems like Attack the Backlog's source is pretty strong. And he's corroborated some interesting things also said by Nash Weedle, who's also been getting a lot of things correct as of late, including the most recent announcement for Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, which Nash Weedle talked about coming to Nintendo Switch 2 well before anyone else, before Switch 2 had even launched back in June. And so there's certainly reason to think that both Attack the Backlog and Nash Weedle have been hearing accurate things with their sources. But anyways, here's a clip that Attack the Backlog has put out there.
Yo estoy bastante ilusionado porque sé que en enero va a empezar una campaña de marketing donde va a haber varias fechas que se va a hablar de Zelda. No sé en referente a que... A ver, podemos intuir que el Hyrule Warriors sale en enero. Es lo que yo pienso. Pero esto es una campaña de marketing que va a durar todo el año. Entonces...
Vale.
Sí.
¿Y sobre juegos o todo la película y...?
No tengo más información
Vale,
por ahora.
Pero va a ser el año de Zelda, ¿eh? Un año de Zelda.
No va a ser el año de Zelda, no. Pero va a haber mucha información de Zelda y muchas cositas de Zelda va a haber como fechas marcadas. Me han dicho que va a haber varias fechas marcadas donde se pretende hacer hincapié en Zelda y que la gente empieza a tener en la cabeza Zelda.
Porque claro, eso es 2026, la película sale en 27, ¿no?
El 27, el 24, 25 de mayo creo que es, creo en mayo de 2027 me parece
27.
que es.
Y bueno, ¿y el año que viene no es un aniversario de Zelda o no? Si me acuerdo, o no lo creo. No, el aniversario de... no, tampoco es... No. Pensaba que era el aniversario de Ocarina, pero no creo que es.
Bueno, el aniversario de Zelda es todos los años.
Como debe ser. Bueno, es que... Bueno,
pero te digo que es muy interesante saber que Nintendo tiene planeado eso porque nos da a entender que van a haber varias cosas, no solo Hyrule Warriors. Entonces...
Es que está abierto, ¿no? Todo Zelda.
Hay esperanzas a los amantes de Zelda.
And so as you see from this clip, Nash Weedle is talking about how he has heard that they are going to start to pick up on Zelda things in 2026 starting in January, and there are going to be some key dates throughout the year. They don't specifically say it's going to be Zelda's 40th anniversary campaign, but me connecting the dots here, that's what seems to make the most sense. As Nash clarifies, it's not going to be the year of Zelda, where Zelda will be the sole focus of the year, but Zelda will have an increased role. They will celebrate Zelda's 40th anniversary, it looks like here, with some key things throughout the year. And one of those looks like will include Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. Now, Nash isn't saying he has heard Age of Imprisonment is coming out in January, he's simply figuring, theorizing, or speculating, which does make sense because Nintendo has told us the game is coming out in winter, and winter can mean any time between December of this year all the way up till February of next year, so that certainly makes sense, and a Zelda spin-off to start off a Zelda 40th anniversary campaign throughout 2026 would make sense as well. I will note, however, from Nintendo of Australia, the description for the game says it's coming out this spring, which in Australia, this spring falls between September and November. So I haven't lost all hope of Age of Imprisonment coming out this year, but looking at how things seem to be falling together here, if Prime 4 is coming out in between Pokemon and Kirby Air Riders, then that doesn't leave much room for anything else except for something in December, which could be Hyrule Warriors, could be something else, we'll see. But what I find most exciting about what Nash Weedle is saying here is that I do think it means that Nintendo is going to have a big push for Zelda's 40th anniversary throughout the year, and that can mean several things. Hyrule Warriors would just be a part of it. There could be so much more. We know the live-action Zelda movie is coming out May 7th of 2027. Nintendo's going to want to really strengthen the Zelda brand going into the movie. The cross-promotion, we've seen Nintendo do it before with Donkey Kong, Pikmin, especially Mario. Of course they're going to do it with Zelda as well. So it makes sense to have a lot of Zelda things happening throughout 2026, leading up to the Zelda movie relatively early on into 2027. And so I do think that would also include advertising the movie, us finally getting posters and trailers of the movie in the second half of 2027. That makes plenty of sense. But I think it would go beyond that. Now that the Donkey Kong expansion is out, Nintendo can now begin to move on to their next focus for an expansion to Super Nintendo World, which I think the most logical next step would be The Legend of Zelda. A big part of Nintendo's history. It would be great to announce that during a Zelda 40th anniversary year of celebration. And we've already seen Onuma with Miyamoto wearing a hard hat in a construction site at Super Nintendo World, planning and considering something, so we assume that the Zelda series producer would have a say in Zelda plans at the park. That makes a lot of sense, so I would say odds are we are going to hear on Zelda plans for Super Nintendo World during 2026, the 40th anniversary for Zelda. But I don't think they would stop there either. I think there would also be more. Probably more Zelda merchandising, a Lego set or two. We've seen them do that with Mario. We've already seen them announce one Zelda Lego set. There's gotta be more. But on the note of that Zelda Lego set that has the Deku Tree from not only Breath of the Wild, but also Ocarina of Time, I think it's time we talk about the most biggest thing. And that's the Ocarina of Time remake. I've had some doubts if the game would actually come out in 2026 for Zelda's 40th anniversary, because I do believe this remake to be an ambitious project, which, by the way, has been theorized by myself and others for a few years already. Evidence has been mounting, but it's also now rumored as well. Onuma has teased Ocarina of Time in a few different interviews. We do have that Lego set. It makes sense for Nintendo to do an ambitious remake because we're still years away before a totally brand new Zelda, and you do need something ambitious Zelda-related, 3D Zelda-related, early on for Switch 2, because historically speaking, Nintendo always does that, and it makes sense because you want to bring in that Zelda fan base early on. Hyrule Warriors, Age of Imprisonment, Breath of the Wild, and Tears of the Kingdom Switch 2 editions, these things aren't bringing in the core Zelda fan base. You need something more substantial. A remake like this, which has been hinted by Onuma and also rumored, and just makes sense, would be ideal to put out in the second year of Switch 2 to get that Zelda fan base involved early on, and also would be ideal to help celebrate and perhaps be the key piece to Zelda's 40th anniversary. If Nintendo has a plan here, which they're going to start to showcase in January of next year, my confidence builds that the Ocarina of Time remake is going to play a role in this. But starting things off with Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, I also think makes a lot of sense. I've talked about this before, but I do believe Age of Imprisonment could be teasing things for the next big Zelda release, which I think is going to be an Ocarina of Time remake. We saw them actually do this with Age of Calamity. Age of Calamity teased new elements in Tears of the Kingdom. It teased the development of the different sages in Tears of the Kingdom, such as Riju, Sidon, Yunobo. We saw elements of them that changed from their Breath of the Wild forms in Age of Calamity that we ultimately saw in Tears of the Kingdom. We also saw them tease the new adult design of Purah that was a big part of Tears of the Kingdom, and perhaps the biggest tease was Tulin literally showcasing him to become the successor or the replacement for his father in Tears of the Kingdom as the Master of Winds. And so the precedent has already been set with Age of Calamity that it can be used as a teaser for a future major Zelda offering, so perhaps Age of Imprisonment can do something similar. And what's interesting about Age of Imprisonment, it's a focus on the story that takes place in the flashbacks during the time of the founding of Hyrule. And here we see a focus on the sages, who also play a significant role in Ocarina of Time, and also Rauru, whose first debut was in Ocarina of Time. Now, the Rauru from Tears of the Kingdom is a different version, but telling us more about the sages and Rauru can offer some interesting context going into an Ocarina of Time remake, where many people will be experiencing the story for the first time, and others returning will be re-experiencing the story, perhaps with some different, subtly changed elements. And another key thing about Age of Imprisonment that could be telling us things about Ocarina of Time is actually getting to see more of Kotake and Koemi, the attendants of Ganondorf in Tears of the Kingdom, whose names are the same of the witches from Ocarina of Time who raised and trained up Ganondorf. Could they literally be the same people? Not reincarnations, but literally the same people far into the past when they were back in their primes and not old witches. Perhaps the story we see in Age of Imprisonment can tell us more about that, their history, their background, which will offer more interesting context going into an Ocarina of Time remake. Age of Imprisonment has some huge opportunity here to really provide some interesting teases for this game that could be a big part of Zelda's 40th anniversary. And so hearing this rumor that starting in January there's going to be a focus on Zelda throughout the year, and that Age of Imprisonment may be playing a role, really gets me excited, not just for Age of Imprisonment, but for what's next, for the Zelda movie, Zelda Park, Zelda merchandising, and most of all, the theorized Ocarina of Time remake, which is a theory, is a rumor, is unconfirmed, but I believe it. Do you? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.